Okay, thank you for joining us in this podcast. In the first section, we had our speaker that talked about how to foster intercultural dialogue for development in Africa. And this section will be having talk on technology, developing capacity in Africa. I hope you enjoy it, and please get get ready for the comment. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Paole. Just want to again acknowledge all of the great points that has been made so far by all the speakers. I think one thing that we can all agree on in this group is that we have at least that I've identified, is that we have a common goal of progressing, of moving forward. And again, I want to make sure that we all remember the first question that Dr. Fowler posed at the beginning of this conversation, is that we are here to come up with a solution. We are here to not just to only talk about the problem, because I think that enough people doing that across Africa already. But as we go into this to this next phase of our conversation today, my area, being a living witness of the opportunity that that I have to be able to grow outside of Nigeria, which is my home country, is that what we need right now, and I'm focusing on in terms of the technology and the science, right? Dr. Fowler, is that correct?
Yeah.
So what we need is, if we cannot change the past, and we know there are potential for us in the future, and we have all of the resources, we have all the brains, we have the manpower, we have everything that we need, but how do we harness those things? How do we put them together in order to make sure that the next generation doesn't suffer the same thing that we are suffering right now? And strategically, like we'll be all talking about, I think that word has been overused, but we cannot oversay it, because if we're going to move forward, if we're going to achieve the potential that is already embedded across Africa, if that is going to come to life, we need to realize who we are. And that means that each and every one of us, including every one of us on this call today, we need to understand that we are powerful in our own space. Every single one of us on this call right now, you have connection in your family, you have connection in your neighborhood, you have connection in your academic space, or in your career. You are a leader in one way or the other, right? Which means that you may not have the power to shift things, in for the entire nation, right now. But if we are committed to be the difference, it doesn't matter how little it is, right? If we're committed to be the difference in every area we find ourselves, it's just a matter of time. And this goes back to my first point earlier. This is not a 10-year strategy. We're talking about 100 years strategy, that if I can do my part, right, and I'm able to develop just one person, because that's all it takes. The last speaker, Dr. Austin, talked about the leadership.
Yeah.
I think it's probably too late to change the current leadership that we have across Africa. So our focus should be, how do we build the next set of responsible leaders? So, and that means that we need to invest in those leaders today, right now, starting from now.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? That if I find myself in this conversation that we're having, and as we come together, what kind of influence, what are you planning to take away from this conversation that we're having today? This should not just be, I'm coming here to just share my thoughts, and after the call is over, that is it. No. How can I be a positive influence on somebody? And this is where mentorship come to place.
Yeah.
Every one of us that has been privileged to rise up, and I think that is true for every one of us on this call today. We have been privileged to have an opportunity that not everybody has. And it is our responsibility to raise at least one person up, to be able to train them in a way that we build value, we build integrity, we let them understand the value system that will carry the next generation to the promised land.
Okay. Uh, Thank you very much, Olumide. We can now usher in our next speaker. And Miss Dr. Bole, are you there?
Good. Good day, everyone.
Yeah. Good evening. How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah.
I will just allow Queen Ashaju continue with the discussion
Yes.
so as not to disrupt the rhythm of the discussion.
Yes. As discussed. So, Queen Ashaju, please, over to you. So, Mr. Femi Adekoya, I will do a brief introduction. He will be co-presenting with Queen Ashaju, and is a leader, is a CEO, and is a versatile person. He works hand in hand with Dr. Samson Obole. I must say that Mr. Femi deals with drone technology in Nigeria. We don't have too much people that do that in Nigeria. Only a few are into drone technology. Based in Lagos and Ogun State axis. And if you are talking about drone technology, please, it trains people. And if you are talking of technology in farming, it does that. So if you have any question relating to how to develop capacity in Africa in terms of drone technology and other farming technology, Mr. Femi Adekoya is here. The speaker will say something. Queen Ashaju, are you there?
Yes, hello, can you hear me? Good afternoon from Nigeria.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you. Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Oh, I'm so sorry. I don't know. I was struggling with my mic somehow. Okay, great. Thank you. It's good to be here. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. I think your organization this Absolute Cedars organization is doing amazing. I love what you're doing. I also love what all the speakers have said, because it seems that we have common problems. Someone spoke about infrastructure, someone spoke about energy. I'm going to be more on agriculture because that's my field, and I just realized that we all have common problems, but we should not dwell on the problems. Like someone rightly said, we should start talking about the solutions. So thanks again. My name is Oyindamola Ashaju, and I've been in the agribusiness space for about 8 years now. I have a startup called Farm Republic, but in this capacity, I'll be speaking on behalf of Dr. Samson Obole. So I'm not sure the turn you want it to take, but I'll just go ahead and just speak briefly about the topic, right?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. The topic before me is developing capacities for food supply and eco investments in Africa. I like to talk in plain English, when you say eco investments. When we hear eco, we mean green. Things that have to do with the environment. So eco investments have to do with industries such as mine, agriculture, carbon, clean energy, forestry, the environment in general, anything that affects the environment. So I'm very particular about development because it's what I really love, especially in my space. And I'm of the opinion that any kind of development that must take place in Africa needs to be African. I'm not saying that the development needs to come from an African, but wherever it's coming from, it needs to be tailored to the needs of Africans. It's good that we can see something in Europe, we can see something in North America and say, hey, this is going to be good for us here. But we also need to understand that Africans or Africa is a peculiar place. It's a different terrain. Even to our soil is different. Our soil is better. Our soil is so different from whatever you see out there. And that's why even seed manufacturers, when they produce seeds, or when they produce seeds, they have to produce those that can be adaptable to our soil. And that's to say that whatever solution or whatever development strategy that we are bringing to Africa, whether it's agriculture, it's infrastructure, it's technology, it needs to be tailored towards who we are. It needs to be tailored towards our needs and how we are able to accept this technology. Also, so for developing capacities in food supply and eco investment, first I just want to say that there's so much finance and investment going on in Africa or coming into Africa. There is so much. But the question we always ask ourselves is, why is there so much money coming in and nothing is changing? You hear about this millions of dollars invested in a particular aspect of agriculture. You hear about it today. Even the Nigerian government, according to what we see and what we hear in the news, is pumping money into this sector. But how come we are not developing? How come things are not changing? And this is a question I ask myself as well. And I feel like we also get to ask ourselves this question. So it's three things for me when it comes to developing capacities: human capital, financial capital, and infrastructural capital. Now, for the human capital, that has to do with me, you, and how we grow personally and professionally, because this also affects
Looks like we lost Queen Oida. Queen Asaju there.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Okay.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, yes, sorry, my network is really fluctuating, sorry. Okay, so human capital, how do I grow? How do I ensure that I'm growing myself? What I have access to? If I decide to do, for example, I'm on this call. This is fantastic development for me, because as I speak, I'm also listening to other people who have access to the right internet. I mean, a lot of us have been on this call and we could not even hear ourselves. These tiny things hamper growth, they hamper development, as tiny as the internet facility that is available to us. So these are the little things that also are dependent on us. I mean, when it comes to development, when we decide that, I want to go for this, I want to develop my capacity in this particular area, do we have access to this development in terms of finance? And not just me as a business owner, the people that we have in leadership, for example, our Minister of Agriculture or whoever is in power that has to do with the food supply or eco investments, for example. When was the last time the person actually took a course or took a development strategy just to improve as a person? Because the fact that you are in a place of authority does not mean that you are exempted from development. So these are the things, the kind of people that are leaders, what is their level of development as human beings? And also for financial capital, funding is very crucial. It's very crucial to develop, especially in food supply. My colleagues and I say, and by my colleagues, I mean colleagues like Samson, in the industry, we always say that, we cannot really function without the government. That's it. Agriculture as a sector, I don't know about other sectors, but agriculture as a sector cannot really function without the government. And this has to do with funding from different angles, finance resources that can be available, and all of those things. So if we're talking about developing capacity for food supply in Africa, because what is happening in Nigeria is not so different from what is happening in Ghana or Ivory Coast. I mean, the top agricultural nations in Africa. So if we are not getting the right funding, then it's difficult to develop, the sector. It's difficult to develop the food supply chain end to end, and that's from the seed to the stomach. And from the seed, there are different value chains. You talk seed, that's the input supply, that the quality of the planting material, the soil itself, production, transportation, sales, marketing, branding, packaging, you know, storage before it gets to the stomach. So all of these value chains, if the right funding is not there, then it's difficult for us to develop capacity in this aspect in food supply. And so for infrastructural capital, as I mentioned, that we need the government, in a situation where I need to move my produce from the farm to the market, I cannot be the one to fix the road that is linking these two places. And so if these things are not in place, the good road network, then we cannot really develop our capacities when it comes to the food supply chain. And so these are the three things under which we can develop our capacity when it comes to food supply. And if you remember vividly, during the pandemic in 2020, we all came to understand the two most important things in life. Because during the pandemic, a lot of us did not get to wear our clothes. A lot of us did not get to, go to, hang out with our friends and all those things. And then we just came to the point, okay, see, these are the most important things to survive: food and health. Those two things, regardless of the fact that people were in their homes, 24/7 for months, we still needed to eat and we needed to stay in good health. And so if we're talking about developing capacities in food supply and the eco investments in Africa, we are talking about very crucial. So I've also realized that when it comes to the workforce population in Africa, over 50% of the workforce population depend on agriculture in terms of income, employment, and because agriculture is beyond farming, is beyond production. So, and this brings me to questions that I would like to throw open to the house. I mean, I'm wrapping up my discussion right now. If there is so much finance, if there is so much investment coming into Africa, how do we ensure that it gets proper? How do we ensure proper implementation? Somebody mentioned earlier, I think it was Mr. Kingsley, who spoke about implementation. Like, projects are not our issue. We are not short of brilliant minds in Africa. No, in fact, we have the most brilliant people in the world. So strategy is not the issue. The issue is implementation. Some days ago, about a week ago, I heard the governor, of CBN Nigeria, talking about investing 300 billion naira into the agri space. And then I was discussing with a friend who is also in this industry with me, and we're saying, okay, so this money now, where did it really go? Now, I'm not disputing the fact that this money was pumped into the sector, but how was it implemented? Why is it that so much money is getting in and we are not experiencing any significant development? And my last question would be, how do we embrace the required development, especially in the area of manufacturing? Africa is a leading producer of so many commodities. When it comes to cassava, maize, rice, cocoa, we are there. Cashew, we are right there, as primary producers. But we are not playing the game of the secondary producers, the manufacturers now, where we turn this produce into finished products. And this is where the real money is, secondary production. Instead, we export these commodities and then we import the finished product. So if we say that we really want to develop capacities for food supply, then we need to look into our manufacturing. We need to find a way to develop manufacturing plants in Nigeria, in Africa, so that we can actually be self-sustainable as a continent. So for me, my few points on this would be more direct private investment from donor organizations. a lot of times donor organizations want to work with governments, and that is fair because they are looking at people they want to hold responsible. They are looking at a large entity that can take up a certain loan and things like that. So for donor organizations or even international banks, I think we need to start having discussions of direct investments into private entities that are reputable, that can be accountable, and that can actually implement, that have the capacity to implement certain projects. And then we need a deliberate election of our leaders. There's no how we can talk about development without talking about politics. I always say something that agriculture, for example, the food supply chain, it's a political space. Yes, it's a very, very political space. So how do we elect deliberate leaders into office? Because politics, they say, is local. We hear people say politics is local every time in Nigeria, and that's not far from the truth because I work a lot with smallholder farmers, and something I've come to realize is all of these smallholder farmers in the interior parts of Nigeria, from the 60-year-olds to the 80-year-olds, they have their voters card. They have their voters card. So if we come together as young people on platforms such as this to say, hey, we need to develop capacity, we need to talk about leadership and politics, we also need to be active in the political space. We need to get our voters card. We need to run for office, no matter how tiny. Start from somewhere. The local people, I don't want to say local people, the people in the rural communities understand politics better than us in the urban areas, and it's quite unfortunate. So if we clamor for good leadership, then we must be ready to get involved. And finally, on collaboration and partnerships, this is very important. There's no need for us to work in isolation or have mushroom businesses. If I'm here, you are there, we are doing something similar, or we are even doing something different that complements our businesses, I think it's important for us to collaborate and foster partnerships. So I'll stop here. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you.
Oh wow, Saji, thank you so much. That was I'm taking notes as you speak. So you touched on so many good points, and I'm so excited every time I get to come into a place like this where all this creative mind comes together. But and I think you actually in a way address your question, which is how do we solve some of these challenges, when it comes to the infrastructure and all of the the things that is need to enhance the the agricultural space. Now, my question, and I'm gonna answer your question with another question, if you pardon me.
Okay.
So I think yeah, and I just wanted to kind of bring in Mr. Femi as well. I know you are also into the technology space, and that is kind of my gig as well. And I want to ask you, this question is addressed to Mr. Femi and also to you, Asaju, to kind of, I'm trying to marry the two questions that you have and the one that I'm coming up with now. And this goes to Mr. Femi Adekoya. What is the role of technology in addressing some of this problem? Because like Asaju said, we know what the problems are. We know the challenges that we're so where we are now is not about trying to figure out what the problem is. We already know what the problem is. One of the things that she mentioned is in one of the states in Nigeria, in X amount of millions was assigned or allocated for agricultural purposes, and the next question is, where is that money? What is the impact of that money? Do we actually have a return on investments for that kind of money that we're spending? If we are not getting anywhere from the political space, or where we actually need some of these things to move, is there a room anywhere for technology to kind of fast track the solution to some of this challenge? And if there is, I wonder if you can if that's something that you are also looking into, since I know drone is one of the tools that's being used to kind of enhance the agricultural process and things like that. what is the role of technology in moving this solution forward and kind of fast track it, as opposed to the traditional way of waiting on the government disbursement and figure out where the money goes and things like that?
I'll let Mr. Femi go first.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm glad to listen to Moni. As she spoke, she hit some points. So now to the question. I think the question is kind of kind of broad in terms of what to address, but I would just take it from you had of the role of technology. I would just put it as the role of technology in addressing development problems, and as regards in the context of the theme, developing capacity. So we know for us to get development, we need to also develop capacity. We need to build capacity, and in addition to what Tony has mentioned in various ways we can build capacity is technology, and I'm more focused on the youth because that is where we can have the crop of people or the demography of people with the energy, the instincts, the desire, the passion, and I mean the desire to learn, you know, and particularly, and technology comes in because technology is a leverage that through which we can build, bridge the gap, developmental gap. Technology is very, very important, and that is why I have been involved with training people. Apart from drone services, I've been involved in training people in drone technology in particular, just like Samson Ogbole, Farmer Samson Ogbole has been doing as regards soilless farming, one of the critical way of solving food security problems. So I believe so much in the power of technology, particularly speaking on drone technology, on manned area technology, in the sense that beyond just some, presently in Nigeria, drones are running, and I know a couple of people, but you know, it still lies, it's still being run like a secret store. For me, to me, that's not the best word I could use, but that's just the way I can describe it. It's still on a low key. So I just thought that, you know, if we want to have development, if we really want to enjoy what this technology brings to our nation, because we cannot deny it, we need technology, we need to leverage on technology to be able to scale, to be able to feed the future, and even in the present, because we're in a situation of food insecurity, hiking price, and even unavailability as it is. So we can explore this technology, and one of the way we can explore is to build capacity, is to get this technology down to youth that can use it as a weapon to fight poverty, as a weapon to fight food insecurity, throughout the value chain. So and that's one of the vital way I believe technology can be used to bridge developmental gap in Africa. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mr. Femi Adekoya. Queen Asaju, I think you also have something to add to that question.
Great contribution from Femi as regards technology. And when I started, I said whatever development we are bringing into Africa or Nigeria has to be African. You know, something that is that we can adapt to easily. It's great that technology is going to make things easier for us in agribusiness or agriculture as a whole, but the majority of people, for example, in the production area, are in the rural communities. How many of them really can make use of these types of technology? And for me, as someone who has a startup, I also face this challenge. You know, trying to link farmers with market. We have a web application, right? And first, we are focusing on the urban farmers because they are tech savvy, they can easily do that. But the bulk of these farmers that we're trying to target are in the rural community. So what do? We get their details verbally through WhatsApp or through phone call, and then we upload their information. Now, how do we really make this process easier? It's a question for me and it's a question for you. While the role of technology is fantastic, how do we ensure that the people that are targeted can, adapt to this technology? Beyond even the use of drone or beyond the use of a web application, how about tissue culture? Tissue culture and multiplying seedlings, genetic breeding, all these little things. Not let me say little, all these other aspects, of agriculture, and even financing. Well, some startups are doing well with financing, financing rural farmers. But for these startups to thrive, they also need funding, which I mentioned, financial capital. They need this funding from the bigger guys. Agriculture is a sector that cannot do it without the government. So if we're talking about technology, technology adaptation, it needs massive funding, because you need to develop the capacity of the farmer to adapt to the technology you are bringing. So these things have to work hand in hand. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I hear that, what I'm hearing is that this problem is all interconnected. At the end of the day, as you're trying to address the food security issues in your area, and in other technology that you're trying to bring to address that problem, and also to localize them and make them usable to the true end user that will eventually be able to plant the seed, and making sure that they plant the right seed, and the lands are cultivated correctly and properly. I think the concept of education and reorientation that we started this conversation with also comes to play, because we have to be able to do both of them at the same time. If you have all of this technology and everything in place, but there's no infrastructure that you need the government piece to take care of them, then we have to be able to do both at the same time, meaning that as we are developing this technology, we also need to develop leaders that will be able to get into political office, that where things actually get done the right way. So what I'm hearing is these two things goes hand in hand. We can't just say let's deal with this today and deal with the government issue tomorrow, or get good governance today, then we solve the food security tomorrow. We have to be able to do both of them at the same time. Mr. Busayo Lukule, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I want to give kudos to people who had spoken. They've actually spoken, right? And also, honestly, what I wanted to talk about, you just mentioned it. In other words, we cannot treat these problems in isolation. These solutions, that have been proposed, they are not mutually exclusive. They are something that we actually need to run in parallel, just like Onyi Damola, I don't know if I get the name correctly, just like she had spoken in terms of, we need to look at how to deal with the farmers. In that regard, what I'm, thinking about is, even though we need to deal with the problem of the now, we also need to look at the future. And that is where what you spoke about in terms of, the leadership in office, who can actually make sure that we don't only deal with what we have now. Even though as we're trying to solve the problem at hand now, we are also looking, beyond now. How do we develop these people for, the future? In other words, how do we make sure that we have, robust plan in place, such that we just don't tackle the problem of today, but we're also tackling the problems of tomorrow. And in terms of, using technology, we've spoken about drone, there are basic areas in which technology usage, advanced, provide, uses. When it comes to, irrigation system, you can help farmers with, some of these things, some of these bulky, activities that they probably do, in their day-to-day activities. We can find a way in order to use, basic technological solutions to kind of aid what they do day to day. And by the time they begin to see, these real-time benefits, and you are introducing, how some of these things can be helpful in the future, they will begin to, buy into this. We might not be able to, probably the kind of farmers that we have now, someone of, age 70 or 60 or 50, probably that have gone past the age of, teaching them some of these technological, tools. But they begin to see this, the benefits. So then they begin to allow their kids, to be trained in some of these areas in such a way that they can catch up in the next 10, 15 years. We begin to have, new kind of, farmers who understand, the usage of technologies, and we can, begin to bridge the gap. When we talk about America today, America also has, rural areas. But even in these deep rural areas, technologies, they are still being used, internet accessibility, internet infrastructure, computer usage. Some of these basic amenities are there, and it's not everybody that can also operate it, but to a larger extent, like 70-80%, we have people who can actually, tap into this technological advancement, and they can use it in their day-to-day activities. So I just want to buttress your point that we can do both at the same time. While we are solving the problem of today, we have right leadership with the right set of policies in place to ensure that, we are also solving the problem of tomorrow. So that's what I want to speak into. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Olukunle. Yeah, I think the issue of, getting the right resource in terms of the farmer, the little people, not little, the small group of people who are actually responsible for feeding the rest of the nations. And I don't think that is a problem in Africa alone or in Nigeria alone. I think it's a problem even across the world. In America, it's the same thing. You have the small set of farmers that are responsible for feeding, millions of other people. So that is a challenge that we also need to find a way to educate. Again, this is where education comes into play. The younger ones to get into this business. And I'm glad to hear, somebody like you, into that space and that business. Our time is up, but I want to give Mrs. Yinyi Lola to kind of give a brief, share her thoughts on. I think she part of a training recently that was sponsored by the Absolute Seeder, and I think it's related to this topic that we are talking about. I just want to kind of give you like a minute to share your thoughts on that. You're muted. Is Fashion okay? Can you hear me? Okay, looks like the audio is not coming through, but I think we've had a great discussion. There's some great points that were made, and there's some also great solution that has been brought to the table. And I know, again, this session is being recorded. These ideas are noted. I myself, I have some notes and some action plans personally that I have noted here. So, again, thank you so much for everyone that has participated in this conversation. With that, I'm going to yield back to Dr. Oluwole. Over to you.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining, and thank you all to all our speakers and to the moderators. And if you are listening to us, I hope that you have learned something from this podcast, and I want you to like it and then share it with your friends. And also, we will appreciate it if you can write a message to us. If you have any concern or you have comment or you have something to tell us, you have the drive to collaborate with us. If you want